So how are you today? How are you today? You've not woken up. You've not woken up. How are you today? Good. Okay, so we're going to have some fun today. I'm going to give you a brief introduction of media and entertainment industry. That's what I teach for my living. That's what I do for my living. I teach in the media and entertainment management sector. I'm an adjunct professor at MICA. I'm also a filmmaker and everything else that they've mentioned. So I want to start with a question. There is some, thank you. Okay, so the question, where do I aim it? Okay, what comes to your mind when I say this word entertainment? You can, let's have an interactive session. You can yell, shout. You want me to come here, I can come there. Okay, anybody? Anybody wants to raise hands, talk about it? Yes, please. Movies, nice. Anything else? Entertainment. What comes to your mind? OTT platforms, very nice. Somebody said from here? Sorry, I can't hear you. The dog. Oh, wow, superb. Interesting. Anybody else wants to add to these thoughts? Very interesting there. Theater, superb. Anything else? Social media, absolutely, absolutely, very good. Keep going, there is lots to it. Music, somebody said cricket, brilliant. Anything else? Somebody there? Memes, somebody, yeah, very good. Thank you very much, my dear, thank you very much.
So friends.
Friends, absolutely, friends. So friends the show or friends?
Friends as
Okay.
in show, and my friends are entertaining
Okay,
too.
superb. Anybody wants to go? Yes, somebody there?
Art or anything creative.
Sorry?
Art or anything creative.
Art or anything creative, absolutely. Anything else that you want to talk about that comes to your mind when I say yes, please?
On a lighter note, it's like news debates.
Sorry?
News debates on a lighter note.
Okay, events, news, absolutely. So practically you've covered about I would say 50% or more of media and entertainment industry. And this is how it goes. Oops, okay. So this is how the Indian media and entertainment industry works, okay? And these are the platforms that we have within the media and entertainment industry. I'm sure we teach few of them, and many of them. I was talking to the dean here, and sir said that, you know, we have started doing artificial intelligence now, and robotics now, and digital media. So everything that we've spoken just now is a part of the larger media and entertainment industry. And entertainment, my friends, is a business, right? So I look at it from not only creative point of view, from the business point of view. So you have these platforms, and these are all active platforms that India has, within the media and entertainment industry. You have TV, you have print media, you have digital media, you have films, you have events. Somebody said events, right? So events is very much a part of media and entertainment industry. You have out-of-home entertainment, out-of-home media, you have radio or out-of-home entertainment, you have radio, you have music. So all this put together, build your media and entertainment industry of the country or any part of the world, right? So wanted to give you a perspective as to how do you, what is the process, this is such a big industry, and I'm sure many of you would aspire to join the media and entertainment industry, some on the management side, some on the creative side, some on the research side, and I can assure you, you will find a role somewhere or the other, because that's how diverse your courses are, and I'm very happy to be here and sharing with you, because there are very few schools in the country which focus on the learning which is multidisciplinary learning, so it's not only interdisciplinary learning, it is multidisciplinary learning, right? So somebody from art and management and digital and technology, they're all getting together and creating something new, right? So that's pretty much what reflects the process of media and entertainment industry. And I just wanted to give you a brief overview. These are your initial years of the career. So, you have something in mind, you have the perspective back on the mind, back of your mind. So, it starts with, so this is the process of any media and entertainment industry platform. So television is one stream, digital is another stream, you have radio, which could be another stream. So these are all various platforms of media and entertainment industry. Now, if you look at the processes, they are pretty much the same, right? So the technique could be different, the way how they are distributed could be different, the way you do production could be different, but largely they follow the same pattern. So what is that process? You start with the need assessment, you're coming up with a radio station, you're coming up with a TV station, you're coming up with the OTT platform. You all start with one need assessment process, that's the research part of it, right? So you want to set up something, you're trying to understand, what is the need to come up with an OTT platform in Gujarati language, or what is the need to come up with a radio station in a tribal belt of Chota Udaipur, right? So that's the need assessment part, that's the research part, right? Then you, from the need, you decide, the goals, what are your goals, what are your organizational goals, what are your objectives, right? What do you want to do in long term and short term, right? So your objective could be profits, right? Your objective could be, doing good to the community, right? Depending on your objective, and your objective could be audio-visual content creation. Depending on your objective, eventually you'll come up with a platform. So now you know what is the need for the consumers. Now, any platform that you work for or that you would interact with, and I'm just giving you a gist of my 22 years of experience of media and entertainment industry. Any platform that you work for or you're associated with is all designed around the consumers that consume that particular platform, right? So it's all about the consumers, and these needs and goals that you're working around, they are trying to they are basically you trying to define, your consumer. You're trying to define who's going to consume it and why that person is going to consume it, and whether there is actually a consumer available for your platform, right? So that's the goal part, and then you do the platform strategy. How would you distribute it? Where will it be available, whether it will be a Gujarati or Marathi or Konkani or Bhojpuri or whatever it is, right? So it's a radio, a radio station or a OTT platform or a film company. Whatever you do, you're going to ensure that it is basically having a perfect strategy for you to one, have the highest number of consumers, or have the optimal consumption within the space you want to operate in. Even if it's a Bhojpuri television channel, you want to have the highest number of consumers consuming the platform, right? So based on the strategy, so within the platform strategy, you will also try to understand how do you want to monetize it, how do you want to make money out of it, how do you want to reach out to people, how do you want to have your content played on your platform. Based on all this strategy, you will create content. So content is something that drives the platform, right? So be it an OTT platform or a film, like a film vertical, or a TV platform, or a radio platform, it revolves around the content that you create. Now, the reason why I had this slide is most of the times when we start our careers and we start working, we start with point number 4. In fact, we need to start with point number 1 to understand how do you arrive at the point number 4, right? So content is driven by the strategy, by the research, by the need, by understanding your consumer. If you do all that right, you will have a successful content happening. The content is then marketed. So the marketing happens, and you know what is marketing, and I don't want to do a marketing class here, but then we can always talk about it offline, and then you distribute it, right? So based on the platform that you have, you will have the distribution strategy, right? So sorry. So if you have an OTT platform, it will be streamed, on over the top. It's a platform, digitally distributed. If you have a TV platform, it will be broadcast, right? So there is a broadcast distribution that will happen. It could be a satellite broadcast. It could be, it could be an IPTV kind of distribution. So these are the distributions that you look at. And finally, at the end of it, you will have a lead. Vision as an insight. So content consumption as an insight will not go away, will not disappear. People love to watch content with family. And in fact, some of the latest trends that we've been seeing are that, there are shows on OTT platforms which are viewed by families together in their living room. So television has this promise of family viewing, community viewing, which is going to stay. And in fact, the biggest trend is going to be regional consumption and consumption like how television, so to speak, used to have during the Kyonki days. I'm sure that is going to come up now. That's a next big growth of OTT. So I hope that answers your question.
So, hello. Yeah. As I aforementioned that to decode the riddle of the media, these presentations and your insights are really valuable for that question. But I want to start from very beginning. At the age of 10, you joined entertainment industry, then radio and then theater. Now this fact itself, it simply amazes me and makes me wonder like how a 10-year-old boy takes such a bold decision, how does he know that this is the thing I want to do? And what about your brought up? Like how did it prompt you to make a career in the entertainment industry?
So thank you for the question. I joined the entertainment industry, as he very rightly pointed out, at the age of 10. I was a child actor. So while acting, I always thought that there's much to it. I was very excited or very curious about the behind the scene activities which were happening. I was looking at my directors and I was thinking that there is something that I could do, and this whole passion of storytelling somewhere started from there. And obviously, I had very, very supportive parents. In those days, back in 90s, if I had told my parents that, no, I don't want to do science now, I had enrolled myself in science stream. And then I said, no, I think I want to do liberal arts. And there was no good school available for liberal arts in those days. So finally, they enrolled me in a commerce school and they completely supported me. And finally, rest was actually, I would say, was more than a miracle for me. My father was a science fiction writer, and he started his writing career after he retired from his day job at the age of some 58, 59. And he actually has written 6 science fiction novels, and that's a prolific work, right? So I would feel that, I was brought up in an environment which would encourage me to tell stories and to be curious about the world around me. And that's what I would encourage you to do, right? As students and as professionals, I'm still very curious as a professional. If there is a new challenge, I would not look at it as something that that I'm frightened about. I am very excited to take that challenge and prove myself, because that keeps me going all the time. So I think that curiosity made me come here. So when I was doing my day job and I was working with corporates, like my other friends, I would not go and chill and spend time over the weekends with friends. I would rather start studying. So I did my PhD while working in a very, very hectic environment in one of those companies where you would end up putting in 14 hours a day, but I still ended up doing more knowledge creation. And I think that ended me up here. I'm in front of you and talking to you. Yes.
Okay, so regarding OTT platforms, one positive consequence is the democratization of content that has resulted. Now we have so many content creators. At the same time, this also raises questions of censorship. And in light of the recent proposal by the government to introduced censorship to OTT platforms. What are your views on this, and how does one resolve this dilemma of censorship and non-censorship?
Okay, so whenever this word censorship comes in, I ended up doing a class, so I cannot do that much. But I'll tell you my perspective to the legal framework, and it's very important for all of us to understand that part, right? So see, we all are governed by guiding principles of our democracy, which is our fundamental rights, Article 19(1), which gives us the freedom of speech and expression. There is also something called the restrictions, right? So now the limitations of our free speech is something that is defined as all the content regulations across the world, right? So I would put it and this has to be a question which comes from a political science professor, right? And they spend their entire life researching around free speech. So I would, and I've done, I've spent time doing research on media and law, and I would say, quote unquote, I would say, so absolute freedom. There is no concept called absolute freedom, right? Always freedom comes with some kind of a responsibility, some kind of limitations, and all the media regulations that we have, they are defined around the limitations, right? Now whether this is good or bad, or whether it is going to perform better or not is it is very premature for us to talk about it, because I can tell you one thing, that if you look at the television regulations, our OTT regulations are much more lenient, I would say, right? So the broadcast regulations that we have in the country, they restrict a lot of things, for you to kind of not do, right? So if you compare that, the OTT regulations or the social media regulations, the amendment of the IT Act is much more empowering to the content creators and to the individuals. However, all these regulations, finally, they boil down to how do you implement them, right? So we all have to wait and watch as to which are the committees which are formed, and who comes in picture, and finally how authoritative we become as a country to not let certain things go on our OTT platforms. I would say it's too premature to talk about it. I would say this is a very welcome change, because when I look at content regulations, I also look at from the smallest of the segment of our society, which is the kids, right? So everything is designed around the watershed hours, or the kids, being access to or getting the access to the content. Now, obviously, we are a very diverse country, and it will take about 5 years to settle down. So I have studied the first regulation of broadcasting and the latest amendment, and there is a huge journey that we've seen as a country. And I'm very confident that our OTT regulations or IT regulations would also match up to the global standards, and they are on their way. So that's my view on that.
So next on, I want to talk about television industry. In television industry, the major part of the television industry is acquired by these stereotypes. It portrays and it runs on stereotypes, like portraying women as passive, or being just responsible for the family. Now, as a student, what I have been able to devise, according to my knowledge and according to my research, there's a speculation that audience say that we don't have anything to watch other than this, and makers say that audience don't want to watch anything other than this. So there is this ambiguous circle. But in 80s or in 90s, back then, we used to watch these classical daily soaps like, Sarabhai versus Sarabhai, Byomkesh Bakshi from Rajat Kapoor. We had classical shows. So audience were receptive to that kind of shows, which actually talked about women empowerment, which actually talked about women divorcing a husband and, extramarital affair. Like, they are able, they are competent for that as well. They are competent for themselves. They are self-independent. We had shows back then. What has happened to us then?
As human beings, you're saying, as country, as a country of consumers?
So, okay, this is my speculation. Okay, so if you can, shed the light on the realities and the nitty-gritties, like what can we do to, become better? And-
So, if I understand your question correctly, see, we as consumers evolve over a period of time, right? So, if you look at the timeline of Doordarshan itself or television in India itself, we started off at a very culturally, enriching kind of content, which was more for community viewing. I'm talking about the Nukkad days and Humlog days, and some very few of, I think only the professors would remember that, because most of you would not even have heard of these names, right? So those were the days when we had very enriching content on television. Right? Then came the time when television, because of the satellite television invasion, I would say, or a cultural invasion, how the researchers would want to put it, it started giving a lot of funky content, youth content, a lot of content which was not relatable. It was not for the Indian market. You had either English shows or shows which would ape the Bold and Beautiful and the Santa Barbaras of the world in Hindi, right? So you had shows like Banegi Apni Baat and Tara and this, then the other, right? And then came the 2000 era, where television actually started copying the successful formats of films. So 80s cinema, the K.C. Bokadia films and these kind of films, right? They had these images of women which would show. So it was rags to riches. So it would show them as women who were suppressed, and then how would they fight for their empowerment and stuff like that. So these people, what they did is the empowerment story that they skipped, and they stretched the plot too long, for the suppression part, or portraying them in a bad light or stuff like that, right? So, and then came a very interesting era, which is 2008 onwards, with the launch of Balika Vadhu, culturally very relevant content, very regional content, also content that would talk about social issues. So we went back as a country in terms of content consumption to the DD days, because DD also used to have this kind of content. So technically, we are just going in a circle. It comes back to this circle, and these are all 10 years of a time span where we go back to the same kind of content ideas. Now, if you look at the current OTT trend, a lot of regional OTT platforms and also the mainstream OTT platforms, have been talking about these things in a different way, in a way how it would attract, the younger audience. Now, to answer your question, see, any platform, has, as I said, the need assessment and the research part and the goals part, right? So whether it's a TV or an OTT platform, the kind of content that they would do, it would be based on some kind of a research of their key targets. So it is not that random. That's more of a representation of their key consumers as to what. So this is what most of, in most of the cases of the popular platforms, this is what India wants to watch. That's why they are creating a content. See, if you create a content that India doesn't want to watch, then it would not run on the OTT platform. In fact, whenever they have tried, and I know I can give you an example of one platform, television platform, which is Sony Entertainment Television, which was always known for doing evolved content. They had Jassi Jaisi Koi Nahi, they had Ladies Special, and they had these kind of shows, very evolved shows, right? They would talk about the today's woman, and they would talk about women and their journey and women's empowerment. These stories, they never worked. So again, it also depends on how do you present this content. They were doing too much of a modern women content. Now the same kind of stories, when Colors started telling in a Balika Vadhu format, people started liking them. Right. So in nutshell, television is more supported by the research that people do about their consumers, and it is for the consumers to evolve, for them to watch, like a very, very evolved content. right? Now if we benchmark ourselves with the OTT platforms, then I can tell you the subscribers, the total subscriptions of the OTT platforms in the country in the last year was 5.9 million only. In a country of 130 crores, we had only 59 lakhs, subscribing for, 59 million, sorry, so 5.9 crores, sorry about that. So in a country of 130 crores, we had not even 5% watching OTT content after paying fees, right? So this is the reality. So we cannot even benchmark them because in research, that's not even a representative sample, right? Thank you.
Yeah, so my question here is about traditional forms of entertainment.
Absolutely.
Or if we can call them pre-digital forms of entertainment, right? Earlier we used to have the circus in town, or if we talk about Gujarat, we have the Bhavai, which
Absolutely.
is a very traditional form of entertainment. How do we save these from dying? How do we keep them relevant in this digital age?
So, okay. So culture is something that evolves, right? So the traditional forms of entertainment is very much imbibed in our culture, right? And it is rooted. So the way how cinema has picked it up very well, or music has picked it up very well, is when they start recreating these formats, into mainstream media platforms, right? So I'll give you an example of Bhavai, since you mentioned Bhavai, right? So Sanjay Bansali, when he did Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam, he actually had scenes around Bhavai, and that's how people got curious about Bhavai. Now the same format they have also created. So if you see the latest song of Bhuj, there is this Bhai Bhai song, Bhala Mori Rama song. Now that's actually a Bhavai song, right? So this is as current as today, right? So if the form is something, so and this is what I believe in, and I kind of keep seeing it, right? If it is something that has to stay and that has people's support, it will continue through generations. If it doesn't, then probably there is something wrong which has happened, with us as human beings, right? And this is how languages have evolved. So we cannot say that a form like Bhavai is extinct, because a lot of Gujarati theatre also has Bhavai imbibed in it, right? So they have evolved over a period of time, and that's what we need to be very sensitive about. How do we evolve through this? So that's also true for the language, the regional language that we speak, right? We don't speak the kind of Gujarati that our grandparents used to speak. If you speak Gujarati at home, same is possible for Tamil, for Telugu, all the languages, right? We don't speak the purest of those languages. We also have the English words in it, and at times, if you travel and if you're living in Delhi from Chennai, you're from Chennai living in Delhi, you've also done 3 years in Ahmedabad, then you would have a very, very mixed Tamil language, right? So this is how cultural forms, art forms, traditions, they all have evolved over a period, and they will keep evolving.
I want to talk a little bit about marketing. So media is a medium. If there is a good, the biggest power of media is that it has access to a lot of people. That's the biggest ally of media. And if there is a good content, okay, there is a good substance. But if there is no one to watch it, that substance, that medium is worthless. So what makers as creators do, to reach to a large amount of audience, so that their content can influence, their content can reach to the designated place. And how responsible should creators be, like what kind of content they are delivering and how are they influencing? Like, are creators aware that their content is going to influence in, these myriad ways?
Okay, if they were aware, they would not do trash content, right? So, responsibility is one thing. Whether people are responsible for creating content, that's a debatable question, right? Because otherwise we will only have a goody-goody thing, and we will only have things which would be great in value. Now that is very ideal, and people don't follow that. In fact, it works in a different, in an exactly opposite way than what you're saying. And thank you for the question. So a lot of times when people make very bad content, but it has been positioned so well, right? It draws a lot of people's attention, and a lot of people watch them. And this is the time that you and I are witnessing, right? And I'll quote a very interesting example. So for a long time, before T-Series became number one on YouTube, PewDiePie was number one. Okay, on YouTube. Now, PewDiePie, is he a corporate guy? Does he have, $1 billion worth? No, he's a small YouTuber who was sitting in his room and creating contents about game. But then he was creating content which was relevant for children because everybody who were playing games wanted, wanted their nuance, his nuance on the game, and that's how we became number one. Now, would you say PewDiePie does number one content? No, not true. PewDiePie does average content? Probably yes. But PewDiePie has great engagement? Yes. So this is exactly the time that we are witnessing, right? This represents the time that we are witnessing. Every content idea or every person that is out there to create content is backed by a lot of strong PR machinery and marketing machinery, and today the marketing has gone down to to the influencers marketing level, right? So practically, if I become a very highly, very great SEO, nicely done SEO filmmaker, then it's probably not my achievement. It could be the achievement of my influencers and people who are marketing me. This is the truth of today. The content marketing is making the content creators big. Now, nobody is debating whether they are good or bad. Now, as content creators, to all of you, my advice to you is to be very conscious about the content that you create, because whatever you do, it influences minds of people, thousands and thousands of people, lakhs of people. I have had during my PhD study, when I was meeting people, sociologists, psychologists, and some professors and people like that from across the state, I have come across stories where people have taken action due to whatever that they've watched on TV or on films, and that could be a bad impact also, right? So be very sensitive, because people who are under the age of 8, so children who are under the age of 8, whatever content you do, if they are exposed to it, it can impact their mind in whichever way, positive or negative way. If that is backed by the kind of surrounding that they have, if there is a negative surrounding and they watch a negative content, it can really lead to disasters. People have committed suicide after watching games or playing games. There is a recent example of a kid who committed suicide because he lost 40,000 rupees. So this is all content creation, right? And we have to be very sensitive as content creators. So any of you who end up becoming a content creator, my friends, you please ensure that you don't create anything that would harm people. And that's what even Mahatma Gandhi used to say. Take a decision that would keeping the lowest common denominator of the country in mind. So we all have to be very sensitive about all that, right? Because we are in the mass media platforms as content creators. Yeah.
Okay. Any questions from the audience?
I'll say Shakti. Shakti was a show that started on a very good note. The transgender community usko support karne ke liye this show started, but then it descended into the typical Saas Bahu, and even they are dumb because she was a transgender in that show, but she did not know that until she was in her prime youth, which is typically not conceivable. You know that by the time you are in your teenage. Right. So these dumb shows, Sasural Simar Ka started great, but then wo makhi ban gayi in that series. So why do you think these shows are work, and uska season 2 bhi abhi it is going to release kuch dino baad, I'm not sure about that. So why do you think that people around India watch these shows if same ही concept, same ही story बरसों से चला आ रहा है, and there is nothing, there is no end to it, sir?
Okay, thank you for the question. So see, when you're doing these shows as a TV channel, right? So and if you're talking about the top TV channels of the country, they run on a lot of numbers. They have a lot of teams supporting the insights. Now they have gotten into artificial intelligence, data mining, and stuff like that, right? So big data analytics and stuff like that. So coming to your question, most of the content that these people are watching are and a lot of shows which start off as a very idealistic narrative, and they have to change or retract their narrative, is also because a lot of numbers when they come across and they say that the show is failing, they try and start putting in the usual suspects, which are the tracks which are which are the typical tracks which India responds well to. You'll be surprised to know, but India watches more than 3.5 hours of content on an average, and South India watches almost 4.5 hours content on an average per day. This is huge. This is humongous, right? So people watch repeats of the same show, right? 5 times they watch the same show. So unfortunately, the average Indian consumer has a lot of these expectations from the usual suspects, and that's what performs for them, and that's why they make it. If something else, so I'll give you your own example. If the transgender narrative would have worked, and it's a great narrative to have, because you also want to acknowledge the other gender in the mainstream, and that's what a social media platform must do, right? I mean, or a television platform must do. So in that scenario, if it would have worked, the TV channel also would have continued to kind of show the same content. Now, what is very important here is the TV channel making money. So the more advertisers you want, more consumers you need, and more advertisers you have, more profitable you are. So finally, it's a game of surviving in the competition and proving yourself number 1, 2, 3, whatever you are. So in this entire process, this becomes like a chicken and egg situation, and we don't evolve as content creators. I would also say there is a lot of problem with the content creators also, because see, people thought that evolved narratives don't work, but Balika Badhu did work in the country. So at times the way you treat your subjects also is very important. It's not only about the numbers. However, in general, so your key consumer in India today for television is women. And they are the highest viewers of television, and unfortunately, the research that television channels have, it says that and they do a lot of pilot testing, that women respond a lot to these conventional narratives, and that's how it is evolving. However, what is very interesting, and it is going to change the scenario a lot, is that the non-linear content forms, which are the OTT platforms and stuff like that, they are having a very different kinds of narrative on their platforms. So I see some hope there.
So, sir, that means the content creators hit on the emotional weak points of women to make their shows work. Because see, the Saas Bahu serials typically show the suppressing that is done to women.
Absolutely, and I agree with you.
We as Indians,
but unfortunately, so that's precisely my point. So I am with you on this. But you think of the other side, which is the TV channel. See, they can't afford to shut down the TV channel, right? And they are so in the legal perspective, they are not doing anything illegal. Morally, probably they are not right by imbibing, inculcating, wrong values of suppressing women. But that's how we are evolving as a country. So I have a lot of hope in the new generation content consumers, because most of them are not on TV. So, in this class, I'm sure about 80% of you have not watched TV in the last 1 week, right? And you guys are going to define the new content trends of the country. So, the new generation will change these, usual suspects that we see on TV, right? Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Somebody
Thank you,
has a
sir.
question there. Do we
we
have
are-
time? Do we have?
No, we are actually
Okay,
running late.
last question and we're done.
So about censorship being a welcome change according to you, do you think that your mind and my mind and the minds of people who will be sitting on that community are sensible and informed enough to know what impact a child's brain will conceive of? And since we know that every coin has a positive side and a negative side, do you think we are on a pedestal high enough to make a judgment about that?
About what?
About censorship, since you said that there are people committing suicides and about like children committing suicides and
No, so I think you misunderstood the context. So thank you for saying that. Don't be under any misunderstanding. When I was not making a statement on censorship. I was talking about the potential impact of audiovisual media platforms that would have. And this is what the research says. You go to any of your professors who deal with sociology, who deal with research, they will tell you, social research, they will tell you that, audiovisual media platforms, right? They have huge impact on people. So obviously we have to take that responsibility as content creators. If that ends up, into any mishaps in people, right? So in children, right? So obviously, so the way how your legal framework for content that has to be shown in public is designed is that in a country like UK or US, the fine would start with for something that you show in the prime time, which should not be exposed to children. If you show something in television channel, the fine would start from $250,000 and it would go to about $1 million just for showing something that and countries are very, very sensitive about all these things. Now the legal. So when I was referring to the censorship, my strong view is that again, these are the views that have come from the research that I've done about the media regulations. The view is that when you are looking at media regulation, you always look at the smallest aspect, the smallest unit of your society, which is the family, and the smallest part of the family is the child, because they are not empowered to decide on their own, right? They need help to decide. Now, if there is free-to-air content or on television or on social media, on digital media platform, and that is not good for children, and if the children have an access to it, then there is a problem in the mechanism of media regulations. This also has a very interesting aspect of how do you practice regulations at home. So the child lock, and how do you have your internet not accessible to children. Every evolved individual needs to do. So when you all become parents, you also need to get into that, because I'm not saying that you ban everything. I'm saying you be sensitive to the larger masses of people. Now, can you expect a tribal guy who has an access to internet on his phone in Jharkhand, who has not even studied 10th standard, to apply media regulation on his own? No, we need to train. First, he needs to ensure that he goes to school and completes his schooling, where you could be teaching them. But he's not even had that exposure. So how do you address a diversity like our country? It's not that simple. That's what I meant, if that answers your question.